All right, Mark here in the basement of the house, working on Hawk stuff again. So right now what I'm doing is I am wiring the DB9 connector for an MGL ASX-1, or is it 2? I think it's 1. Anyway, it's the MGL velocity singles, altitude and airspeed indicator. And I'm replacing my altimeter with this unit because it actually has an inches of mercury setting in it, and I don't really like the way my current altimeter just basically has a rheostat where you can set your field elevation, and then there's a chart they expect you to carry with you in the airplane to convert an ATIS setting for your altitude, and screw that. I want to just be able to put in the actual altimeter setting. Novel idea, right? If I'm going somewhere an hour away or so. So anyway, I've got my 18 gauge wire here that I ordered from Amazon, and my DB9 connector, and I've got also the MGL recommends a 1 amp slow blow fuse, so I bought some of those fuses here off of Amazon, the little glass ones, and it's the time delay, not the fast blow. And I will use fast blow on some of my other components that recommend just a regular 1 amp fuse, but on this they want a time delay fuse. So I've got one of these connectors, and I've got my my black 18 gauge wire. It actually comes on a spool with red and black, so I will eventually be connecting the red to the end of the fuse holder assembly. I've got some of these neat little connectors where you just heat them up and they already have the solder in them. They're pretty cool. I actually used them on my golf cart at the camper, and they're really awesome, and they come with some heat shrink. So I've got some heat shrink already wrapped between the red and the black wire. I've got my DB9 connector, and I've got it held with just a little one of these little rubber coated spring clamps. I don't have like a proper soldering setup, if you will, in terms of one of those neat little clamps with the magnifying glass and everything. We've got those at work, but I don't have one here at home. That's fine. My eyes aren't too bad yet for close-up vision. And I've got my soldering iron set up here with a sponge that's damp, so I can clean it. So here is from the manual. Oh, there it is. ASX-2 is the type of instrument. And actually, I'll show you what it looks like if you're not familiar from the manual. There it is right there. So even though I already have an airspeed indicator, which I'm keeping, I used one of these at work, and I was able to buy it at a good price, and I primarily just want it for the altimeter. I really wish this had vertical speed in it as well, and I have emailed Matt at MGL and asking him, is there any way through a firmware upgrade that you can help me let this thing display vertical speed? Matt's a good friend of our business at Sonics. We've been dealing with him for many, many years, and he's really enthusiastic to help us even with personal projects. I know he helped Steve, our warehouse manager and purchasing manager, with a really good price on one of their headsets when he started flying his sport pilot training. So hopefully Matt can whip something up for me that I can actually upgrade the firmware on it. Otherwise, they do make, velocity singles, these black and white guys are obsoleted. They don't sell them anymore. They do make in the same size. This is the, 3 1/8 inch diameter instrument size. They do make a color version of that's just an altimeter with vertical speed. But it's like $300, and I've spent a lot on this airplane repair already. Maybe I can upgrade it later. And I haven't looked at the manual and see if the pinouts are the same. But you know, essentially this just needs power. I was considering a Flight 2 instrument, but I already have a fuel gauge. I got a B-Light LED fuel gauge. I have a stopwatch or a clock on there, so I don't need the timers. I've got an hour meter, both in my TAC and also an airframe hour meter back on the further back on the fuselage. So, and, you know, I'm not running fuel flow and that kind of stuff. And the numbers are kind of small. The one thing about the Hawk is that the panel is pretty far away from your seat. And, you know, it's a two-stroke powered airplane. Sometimes it vibrates a little bit depending on your throttle setting. And I just wanted to make sure I had something with a big enough display. So I'll have no problem seeing this altimeter display. So anyway, back to what I'm doing here. So I've got my DB9 connector parts, and here's the pinouts. Nice thing I like about this manual, and I had to kind of squint in the right contrasty enough light so I could see the numbers and printed on here and just double check. But the manual actually shows the back side of the connector that you're going to be soldering to, so you don't have to try to you know, look at the male pin end and then try to reverse it in your mind to make sure it's right. Obviously, if you can get a magnifying glass and the right lighting, or just squint like I did, you can see the little numbers on there and verify, which of course I did, but I like that it shows it the way you're looking at it when you're soldering it up. So in pin 6, I'll have red for power, 12 volts. In 1, I'll have black for my ground. I'm not going to do the white in pin 9. That's for an alarm output, and I really don't need an alarm of any kind on an altimeter. The instrument already has an LED light in the body that will flash at you if anything gets out of any limits that you set. I don't even know what limits I'd put in for airspeed and altitude. I guess I could put in a limit for VNE or that sort of thing. But, you know, there's lots of other cues when you're going that fast in a Hawk. So anyway, I'm not going to worry about that. Pin 4, which is right next to pin 5, it's the lower right, first pin in from the right, is what they call it at RCA. That's your AirTalk hookup, and it's used for firmware upgrade. So I may put an extra length of black wire in there and just leave it loose, pigtailed, in case Matt does give me something I can upgrade firmware with. I may just, you know, we have other DB9 connectors wired up at work, and maybe something that's already wired up correctly for firmware upgrade that I can just plug into the back of the instrument. So I'm still debating if I'm going to put a wire in there. I probably won't. Also, Matt's a busy guy. I'm not counting on him to be able to help me with vertical speed. He's got a lot of other fish to fry. So really what I'm doing right now is just connecting power and ground. So I've just soldered, let me get slightly further away so it focuses. I've just soldered my red wire into pin 6, and it's cooled and it's looking really good. So I'm going to kind of flip my clamp around here, because I'm going to be soldering right onto pin 1, which is right there. So I did YouTube this to see, you know, kind of the recommended techniques here, and so you'll notice these pins on both sides, they have these cups, and it's nice because you can orient it like this, and the long side of the cup is down, and what you do is you preload it with some solder, and it holds the solder in there, and you pre-tin the wire. Find my fingers here. There we go. You pre-tin the wire and pre-tin the cup, and then you also pre-tin the soldering iron itself, and when you put it all together, it goes in there pretty nice and cleanly. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to try to hold the phone while I do this. I don't have a good way of really showing it to you live. I don't have Gavin around. He's out playing with his friend. So I'm going to go ahead and hop off the camera here and do this, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, I just want to show you something. I've tinned the cup, and because I was working on it, you know, in this orientation, I got a little excess solder. I'm sorry I don't have a macro lens. It's really hard to get in here good, and I don't have a newer iPhone. But that's getting really close there, so I'm going to actually go ahead and heat it up again with the red wire on top, so that gravity hopefully lets this glob of solder get a little bit further away from the red wire. And you know, obviously I don't want to bridge between the ground and the power. I'll blow the fuse. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll go ahead and flip it back over and put the wire on. And there we go. Hopefully you can see it good there. I've got that big bulb of tin away from the pin 6 position. So we're ready to flip it over and connect the black wire to pin 6. I'm sorry, I got the big glob away from the pin 6. So we're ready to flip it over and connect the black wire to pin 1. Okay, there we are. So I got it on there, and it's definitely not as clean looking as the other one. I believe these are both 18 gauge wire, but maybe I had the black side a little too tinned or something. I'm not. Wish it was a little cleaner. I actually tried it a couple different times, and this is kind of the cleanest I can get. I did have to connect a few clamps together just to give this a little more weight. But, you know, we've got nothing, you know, in danger of, you know, getting in, invading the area of the other wires, and I think that's good. You see this big loop in here because I had to pull some extra wire out of the heat shrink so that I had wire to push forward into the cup with. So I'll pull this back out so that they're even lengths, and if we could focus, that would be great. Pull this out so that they're even lengths before I go ahead and shrink this up and start assembling the connector. All right, so I've got the wires evened out here. I've got my shrink wrap pushed up, and I did put a little inboard kink in the wires because when test fitting them in the half shell here, it kept wanting to push the connector from one side to the other. So this way it's got a little kick to it, and I can kind of curve that end around to straighten it out. Now I'll have to look up here on YouTube or wherever just exactly where all of these parts go. Pretty sure I know what to do with these. I think these clamp in here and clamp the wire. These screws with the shank on them go in here, and the shank gets retained in the plastic housing so you don't lose your connection screws for your device. I am not sure what these are for, so I want to look up and see when and where they get used. But so first I'm going to do my shrink wrap, and I don't have a heat gun here at home. I'm going to try a hair dryer and see if it's enough, if it's hot enough to shrink this. And I guess the good thing about that is, you know, it not being a heat gun, I don't have to worry about overheating my solder connections or melting my plastic table. So let's give this a try, and we'll see if we can shrink up the shrink fit with just a hair dryer on the high setting. We'll do here. So we're going to switch that on. Okay, got some hot fingers. And I did do it mostly with two hands instead of one hand on the camera. I think it shrank down pretty well. I've done this before with a candle as well. but you know, that gets soot on it and stuff. I think this is pretty good. You know, we'll see. You know, it's definitely not going to slide, so I think we're good. Now I'm just going to look up how to actually assemble this thing properly, and I'll let you know what I find out. Okay, here's what I was able to determine. I looked at a video of this kind of laid out, and these clamps don't actually go in these holes. They clamp together in the space between the holes and the end, and that makes sense as the clamps have a threaded side. You can see the threaded side of this one, of the far one here, and then obviously this goes in this end. There's a little plastic lip here that goes over the metal faceplate, if you will, of the connector, like so. These screws with the shank on it go in here. These brackets, I didn't know what they were. They go up the shank, and it'll go in. If I can do this, watching it through the camera, probably not. Okay, there we go. We got them in. So those pieces go in on the outside of the plastic, on the back side of that shank, so that you're not screwing this little head down into the plastic, which, you know, you'd quickly crack it. So this helps you to clamp the whole piece together, and there you can see a little shape there to catch the little angles on those clamps, and that's so that you don't clamp or don't crack the plastic here as you're putting it together. So this will go on like so. I'm going to kind of fit it in here with these clamps and get it in, and you can see there's a shape there for the nuts to retain the nuts, and then you just screw in the other screws from the other side. This particular DB9 kit did not come with a rubber grommet for the back end. Not too concerned about this because this, although in an ultralight with removable doors, it's behind the panel. It's in an area that isn't going to see rain or anything, even if I'm tied down outside overnight or something. So I'm not really worried about it. And we're going to go ahead and assemble it. Okay, there we are. We're all assembled. Got everything in there. Got these screwed together nicely. And you can see in here the clamp, which will help prevent it from pulling the solder connections out. Now I've got, of course, this black wire is still attached to the spool, and then I can cut it to length when I get to the airplane. I'm going to go ahead now and connect my red side. So I've got this in here, and got it kind of clamped up. I'm going to push that back in there. Now I don't know if the hair dryer is going to be enough to do this one. So we'll see if this works. Otherwise, I might have to do the candle thing like I did before on the golf cart. Or maybe go to Harbor Freight and buy a heat gun. Airplane projects are great excuses to go buy cool new tools that you didn't have before. So we'll see what we get here. Okay, definitely not getting hot enough. Some of the heat shrink is shrinking, but our solder piece is not melting. So I'm gonna probably just get a candle and hold it over the flame, and I'll just have to clean off the soot. I do have strung up the cable a shrink wrap piece that will go over this when it's done, and then just an additional shrink wrap. Okay, so it actually took quite a bit of heat to melt the solder, but you can see here I've got it instead of using the candle, which didn't give me quite enough control, the only candle I really found is in this deep glass. So I found I had to bend the wire such that it was wanting to pull the wire ends out of where the connection is. So instead I just used the lighter, and this is one of those sort of torchy ones, and just really kind of being able to control that way, and that worked really well. So I've got it, it's cooled down a little bit. I'm going to grab my heat shrink and slide it on up the wire here. And I've got the candle lit. I'm going to use the candle for the heat shrink. I think it's going to work a little bit better than the hair dryer did. And the heat shrink just kind of helps make that connection a little bit stronger. Let's see if I can film and heat shrink at the same time. I'm just going to kind of hold it over there and see if we start getting some shrink here. I may have to actually kind of bend the wire and shove it in there a little bit. Yeah, it's going a little bit. Yeah, there we go. It's starting to go. And this is good actually because it keeps a good distance away from the candle so we don't overheat it and just burn it. I think I'll have to finish this with 2 hands off camera. And there we have it. Got it nice and shrunk, and that candle's actually trimmed pretty well, so it wasn't putting out any soot either, so I don't have to really clean any black sooty crap off of there. And so this is, I do have occasion to use more 18 gauge wire in my system, but for now I'm just going to leave this on the spool, like I said, so I can actually unravel the spool to the lengths that I need. I think the other thing I'm going to do today is wire up a connector for my alternator that'll go to my voltage regulator, and also wire off to the strobes. So yeah, I'm just thinking about it here and how I'm going to do that. I might actually have to do that at the airport because the strobes are already have wires run. I don't want to have to rerun the strobe wires. Anyway, I'll let you know what I do. Thanks for hawking it with Mark.